Stop everything you're doing right now. Because what just surfaced in the Nancy Guthrie investigation doesn't simply shift the focus of this case. It dismantles everything we thought we understood about that night. And the part that's going to sit with you long after this video ends is this. The evidence that's emerging doesn't lead to a stranger. It leads somewhere far more intimate. And once you understand what investigators are now looking at, you'll know exactly why the public updates dried up, why the press briefings stopped, and why the FBI is no longer asking witnesses what they saw. They're asking what someone planned. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, the woman tens of millions of Americans watch from their kitchen tables every single morning. And right now, nobody knows where Nancy is. But law enforcement believes the gap between not knowing and knowing is closing fast. New DNA evidence. A recovered glove. A second search warrant executed at a private residence. A digital reconstruction of movement during the hours she vanished. This is no longer a missing person case in any conventional sense. This is an identification case. And the pieces are fitting together in a way that cannot be explained away. Welcome back to Cold Case History. I am going to walk you through every detail of this case. The footage, the forensics, the suspect behavior, the DNA, and the digital evidence trail. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. We cover every update on cases like this one the moment they break. And trust me, this one is not finished breaking yet. Let's begin at the beginning. February 1st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie had spent the evening with family. She arrived back at her home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, just before 10 at night. She's 84. She lives by herself. The Catalina Foothills is the kind of place where front doors stay unlocked, where people wave from driveways and know each other's names. The kind of neighborhood where residents go years without anything worth calling the police about. Her garage door sealed shut at 9:50 p.m. That timestamp has been independently verified. For nearly 3 hours after that, nothing. No alarms activated. No calls placed. No movement that drew any attention. Then, just past 1 in the morning, something changed. A figure appeared near her front door. Dark clothing. Deliberate movement. The doorbell camera caught a partial image before the lens was physically obstructed and the unit was disabled. Investigators later determined the camera housing had been forcibly tampered with. That footage was handed directly to the FBI, who released it to the public. For weeks after, that image became the entire conversation. The masked figure. The cut camera. The narrow window of time between the last exterior movement recorded and the moment Nancy's heart monitor stopped transmitting. 2:28 in the morning. Not an alarm. Not a call for help. Not a sound. Her heart monitor simply went silent. And here is the question that was not being asked loudly enough in those first days. How does someone approach a home they've never been to, in the middle of the night, disable a camera without triggering anything, and navigate through a house belonging to a woman they've never met without a single visible mistake? They don't. That level of precision is not the product of chance. It is the product of familiarity. Knowledge of where the cameras sat. Knowledge of what the inside of that house looked like. Knowledge of her schedule, her habits, her routines, what time she came home, which door she used, how the security system worked, and how long they had before anyone would notice she was gone. That is what investigators quietly began pulling apart. Not just who appeared at the door, but who already knew exactly what was behind it. And this is where the case turns completely. Because while the public was obsessing over the masked figure in that grainy doorbell footage, law enforcement had shifted its gaze to something else entirely. What was happening inside that house before the camera was touched? According to officials with direct knowledge of the investigation, a forensic review of Nancy's phone and home systems revealed interior digital activity that occurred before the exterior camera was disabled. Read that again carefully. Interior activity before the camera was cut. That sequence does not fit someone arriving cold to a property and improvising their way through it. That sequence fits someone who was already present inside, or someone who had access to that home before the night in question. Investigators began quietly dismantling the original timeline and rebuilding it from scratch. Then came the DNA. The FBI confirmed that biological material was collected from Nancy Guthrie's property. That evidence was processed and submitted to CODIS, the national DNA database maintained by federal law enforcement. No match was returned. Now, the way most people hear that, they assume the trail simply ended there. That is not what happened. A profile without a CODIS match means one of two things. Either the individual has never been convicted of an offense that required their DNA to be entered, or they haven't been entered for another qualifying reason. Neither of those outcomes means that person cannot be found. It means investigators have to go further. And further is exactly where they went. The search expanded into commercial genealogical databases, And that expansion is what fundamentally altered the direction of this entire case. Genealogy-based forensic investigation does not start by searching for a name. It starts with a family, a biological family tree, a geographic cluster of relatives who share enough genetic markers to anchor a search. From there, analysts build outward across generations, branch by branch, until one name begins appearing at the convergence point of multiple lines. That process takes time, but it is not imprecise. It is, in fact, extraordinarily precise. And precision is the entire architecture of this case. On February 12th, investigators made a discovery approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. A single black glove, discarded near a roadside in an open area, with no obvious reason to have been there. On its own, that sounds unremarkable. In the context of this case, it became one of the most significant physical finds since Nancy vanished. The FBI publicly confirmed that the glove appeared consistent with the gloves worn by the individual captured in the surveillance footage, and that biological material had been recovered from it. Pay close attention to that language. Appeared consistent. Investigators speak with surgical precision. They are not saying it is the same glove until the science confirms it is the same glove. But what they are saying, carefully and deliberately, is that this item has a forensic connection to this case. And that connection is being followed wherever it leads. Here is how that process actually works. The moment the glove was recovered, a chain of custody was established. Every person who handled it was documented. Every transfer was logged. Because in any courtroom that matters, the story of where that glove traveled after it was found is just as important as what it was found with on it. Lab technicians targeted the highest contact zones first. Fingertips, inner palm, the wrist seam. These are the areas where skin cells, perspiration, and biological material concentrate most heavily and survive longest. From those zones, a DNA profile was extracted. Not a name, a coded genetic sequence, a profile. And then came the detail that most people missed when it came out. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed that the DNA pulled from the glove did not match a separate biological sample collected from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. 2 distinct profiles. 2 different people or 2 pieces of the same puzzle not yet fully assembled. Either way, that result is not a dead end. It is a signal. It tells investigators there may be more than one individual involved, or it tells them that one sample is more directly tied to the event than the other. Both profiles are now being actively compared against additional sources. Genealogy databases. Known individuals with documented connections to Nancy. Anyone whose behavior, timing, or physical proximity placed them near that home on the night she disappeared. The glove didn't close the case, but it opened a door that investigators walked through without hesitation. Here is something that most viewers never fully grasp about how modern investigations function. The most powerful witness in a case like this one is not a person. It's data. Cell towers, home routers, vehicle computers, doorbell timestamps, bank transactions, app activity, location ping logs from devices that were never supposed to be anywhere near that address. Every single one of those things leaves a permanent record, and every single one of them can be subpoenaed. All of it is being analyzed in the Nancy Guthrie case right now. Investigators started with Nancy's own devices. Her phone, her tablet, her home Wi-Fi router. All of it collected for forensic imaging. All of it copied in its entirety before a single file was accessed, because that's how you protect the integrity of digital evidence when it eventually enters a courtroom. What those devices showed was striking in its silence. After Nancy returned home that evening, there was no outgoing activity recorded. No calls, no texts, no emergency messages, nothing. And that absence is itself informative. It means either Nancy had no access to her phone during those critical hours, or her phone was inaccessible to her. Both possibilities compress the timeline in ways that matter enormously to investigators. From there, the analysis moved to cell tower mapping. Law enforcement requested coverage logs from towers within a set radius of Nancy's home, specifically covering the early morning window of February 1st. Cell providers retain records showing which devices registered with nearby towers during any given period, when those connections were established, and when they were dropped. Investigators were not looking for names at that stage. They were looking for patterns. Specifically, devices that appeared near that property during the critical window and then vanished just as cleanly. Temporary presence. In a quiet residential neighborhood at 1 in the morning, a device that appears briefly and disappears is not invisible. It stands out. According to sources close to the case, analysts isolated multiple devices that connected to towers near Nancy's home during the window under review. The majority matched ordinary residential traffic. People who live there. Devices that are always there. A small number did not. Those anomalous connections are now being traced through subscriber records and movement history. But the data trail extended beyond phones. Investigators also turned their attention to vehicle telematics. Modern vehicles are essentially rolling data servers. Ignition events, door openings, mileage intervals, GPS coordinates in many models. Even vehicles without active navigation subscriptions routinely retain internal event data that can be extracted when investigators execute a warrant on the vehicle itself. And in this case, at least one vehicle was examined under exactly such a warrant. The onboard data extracted from that vehicle can confirm whether it was moved during specific timeframes, whether its doors were opened or closed at particular moments, and whether its recorded route aligns with the physical evidence already in hand. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed that vehicle analysis was initiated after new digital correlations came to light. That timing is not incidental. When a vehicle's movement aligns with unexplained cellular activity, which itself aligns with forensic evidence recovered at the scene, investigators stop seeing a collection of unrelated pieces. They start seeing a sequence. And a sequence is something a judge can evaluate. If you're still here, subscribe, because cases like this only work when people stay and tell us where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family represent. Drop your country or city in the comments. In any investigation involving a missing person, one individual always receives the most immediate and most intense scrutiny. The last person confirmed to have been with the victim. In Nancy Guthrie's case, that person is Tommaso Cayan, the husband of Annie Guthrie, Nancy's daughter. He drove Nancy home after their family dinner that night. That has been confirmed by both family members and investigators. And it is absolutely essential to state clearly what that means and what it does not mean. Being the last known person with someone is not evidence of involvement. Investigators are fully aware of that. But it does mean you receive close, thorough, methodical scrutiny without any exceptions being made. The scrutiny in this case went well beyond a standard conversation. Public records confirm that investigators conducted 2 separate searches at the residence shared by Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cayan, a home located roughly 4 miles from Nancy's. The first search was consensual. The second required a court-issued warrant. That distinction carries enormous weight. A search warrant does not materialize on its own. A judge has to receive a formal application from investigators, review the probable cause they've documented, and make an independent legal determination that credible, specific reasons exist to believe additional evidence may be present at that location. That is not a formality. That is a judicial review. One consensual search is procedural. 2 searches, with the second requiring a warrant, is a signal. Law enforcement has not publicly disclosed what triggered the second warrant application or what was collected during that search. But investigators returning to the same address twice, under escalating legal authority, communicates that the first visit produced something that demanded a second visit to pursue. That is where scrutiny stops being routine and becomes focused. And at this level of investigation, focus reflects something significant driving it. Authorities have been deliberate in how they speak publicly about this case. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has stated clearly that no formal suspect has been named. When reporters asked directly whether any family members had been eliminated from consideration, his answer was unambiguous. No one has been fully cleared. Every word of that response was chosen with intention. It keeps the investigation legally open. It maintains pressure where investigators need it. And it signals that the process of elimination is still actively underway. In early February, a new dimension entered the case. A message. Authorities confirmed they were evaluating a communication connected to Nancy's disappearance, described in public reporting as potentially coming from individuals claiming to be holding her. Savannah Guthrie released a direct video appeal. In it, the family acknowledged receiving a message and expressed their willingness to cooperate to bring Nancy home safely. That kind of public statement does not get made without direct coordination with law enforcement. You do not announce publicly that you are open to paying a ransom without understanding the investigative implications of doing so, which means investigators were watching closely because that message, regardless of who sent it, entered the evidence record the moment it was received. Around the same time, a media outlet reported receiving what was described as a ransom note, demanding a substantial sum in Bitcoin with a specific wallet address attached. The outlet confirmed the wallet address existed. Here is what that actually proves and what it does not. A Bitcoin wallet address can be created by anyone in under 5 minutes. Its existence tells you almost nothing about who's behind it. What investigators do is go deeper. They examine the blockchain. They check whether the wallet has any prior transaction history. They monitor whether any funds are moved through it, and they construct controlled channels so that if a transfer does occur, every movement of that money creates a traceable, permanent record. Cryptocurrency is not anonymous. It has never been truly anonymous. Every transaction is recorded permanently on a public ledger. And many individuals who believe they are concealing themselves behind a wallet address have severely underestimated how traceable they actually are. When a message enters a case at this level, investigators face a series of immediate and critical decisions. Was the message sent directly to the family or filtered through a third party? A message delivered to a media outlet passes through more hands than a message sent to the family directly, and more hands means more opportunities for distortion and misattribution. What is the sender actually asking for? Demands like don't involve law enforcement or act alone are often more revealing than the financial figure itself, because they tell investigators what the sender fears. And most critically, is there proof of life? The family made clear they required confirmation that Nancy was genuinely alive before any further steps could be considered. That demand is not merely emotional. It is tactically precise, because anyone running a hoax will demand payment without ever being able to produce proof. And forcing someone to produce proof forces them to create something that can be analyzed, traced, and compared against other evidence. Every response becomes a data point. Every exchange opens a new thread, and investigators follow every single thread until it either goes somewhere or proves it doesn't. This is the part of the story that deserves more attention than it has received, because what happened in the media ecosystem around this case didn't just create noise. It created active interference. By early February, a journalist used her true crime podcast to describe information she attributed to an unnamed law enforcement source. She characterized Nancy's son-in-law as a potential suspect in a crime. That language spread instantly. Across social platforms, across comment sections, across reposted clips. Repeated often enough and widely enough that it began to feel like established fact to people who hadn't seen the original footage. And here is the damage that creates. Damage that is easy to miss if you're not thinking about how investigations actually work. The moment a name becomes publicly attached to a theory in the open internet, everything about that person becomes evidence in the court of public perception. Their silence looks like guilt. Their cooperation looks like strategy. Their grief looks performative. Hiring an attorney, a fundamental constitutional right, gets reframed as an admission. That climate does not only harm the individual being named, it poisons the investigation itself. Witnesses become reluctant to speak to anyone. Tips start reflecting the dominant online theory rather than actual observations. People who might hold genuinely relevant information go quiet because they don't want to become the next name in a viral video. Law enforcement recognized that damage and did something rare. Sheriff Nanos went on record and pushed back directly. He described the coverage as reckless. He stated explicitly that it risked harming both innocent individuals and the integrity of the investigation itself. Law enforcement agencies almost never criticize media coverage directly and publicly. They manage information quietly. They issue statements. They redirect. They do not, as a rule, call out specific coverage choices by name. When a sheriff does exactly that, it reflects the severity of what the interference was doing to the actual work. A subsequent statement from the sheriff drew a clear line around the Guthrie family, clarifying that investigative focus was being driven by evidence, not by online speculation. The investigation was not operating on the media's timeline. It was operating on the evidence's timeline. Let's talk about what it actually means when investigators say a person of interest has been identified, because it does not look the way most people imagine it. There is no single dramatic revelation. There is convergence. When digital records and physical evidence and surveillance analysis and interview data and forensic results all begin trending in the same direction simultaneously, that convergence is when investigators describe the circle tightening. That is the stage this case has reached. A digital reconstruction of movement from the night Nancy disappeared has produced what officials are describing as a narrowed person of interest. They have not publicly named that individual, but they have confirmed that investigative focus has tightened considerably. Historical location data is now under active review, which means investigators are not only asking where a specific device was on the night of February 1st, they are asking where it was in the days before. Because if a device appears near a property multiple times in the week preceding a disappearance, that device moves to the center of everything. Financial records have been formally subpoenaed. Bank account activity, online transactions, any purchase or transfer that might reflect advanced planning. Insurance documents and estate records are also under review, which is standard practice when the victim is elderly and living independently, and routine practice does not imply suspicion toward any specific person. It implies thoroughness. The behavioral analysis unit brought in by the FBI evaluates indicators of planning, risk assessment, and environmental familiarity. Their conclusion in this case was that the event did not present as opportunistic. It presented as directed. Directed events are categorically different from random ones when it comes to evidence. They require preparation. Preparation requires decisions. Decisions leave records. And records, once recovered and cross-referenced and verified, become a case. On February 24th, the Pima County Sheriff's Department announced that it would be scaling back the frequency of public updates going forward unless new information created a specific need for a release. A lot of people read that announcement as the case going quiet, as momentum stalling. It was the opposite. When a law enforcement agency reduces its public communication in the middle of an active investigation, it almost always means they are approaching something significant. You don't want public discussion shaping what witnesses say before investigators reach them. You don't want the person responsible understanding what evidence has been collected before you're prepared to act on it. You don't want premature exposure forcing someone to destroy evidence, change location, or alter behavior. You don't want false confessions flooding the tip line and consuming investigative resources. Less public noise, more controlled precision. That is the posture of an investigation that believes it is nearing something, not retreating, preparing. The reward for information leading to Nancy Guthrie's safe return now stands at $100,000. $50,000 from the FBI, $50,000 from the family. Reward amounts do not increase without deliberate reason. When agencies raise the figure, it means they believe targeted cooperation from the public still has a meaningful role to play. That somewhere, a neighbor or a coworker or someone who caught a glimpse of something small and dismissed it as nothing may be holding the one detail that bridges a remaining gap. In this case, investigators sent direct requests to residents within a 2-mile radius asking for any surveillance footage covering the period from January 1st through February 2nd. That window spans a full month before Nancy disappeared. Think carefully about what that tells you. Investigators are not only examining what happened the night she vanished. They are looking for evidence of someone watching, preparing, and waiting in the weeks before it happened. Vehicles that made the same pass more than once. Faces that appeared in places they had no apparent reason to be. Slow approaches. Unexplained stops. Preparation leaves physical traces. And those traces don't vanish simply because the person leaving them assumed they were unnoticed. Nancy Guthrie disappeared in the early morning hours of February 1st, 2026. Since that night, nearly every minute of those dark hours has been reconstructed, analyzed, and accounted for. Every minute except one. And investigators now believe that final minute may belong to someone they are very close to identifying. Here is what the evidence record currently establishes with certainty. DNA evidence was recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property and from a glove found 2 miles away. Neither profile returned a match in Cody's. Both are being actively pursued through genealogical databases capable of tracing family lines across multiple generations. 2 separate search warrants have been executed at a specific private residence connected to a person close to Nancy. A digital reconstruction of movement using cell tower data, vehicle telematics, router logs, and surveillance footage from a 5-mile radius has produced a narrowed person of interest. Financial records have been subpoenaed. Historical location data extending back weeks before the disappearance is under review. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit concluded the event was planned, not random. And the sheriff of Pima County has publicly confirmed that no one connected to Nancy Guthrie has been fully eliminated from the investigation. This case is not over. It has not gone cold. It is not suspended or stalled or waiting on something that may never arrive. It is moving, quietly, methodically, and in one direction. The data is pointing somewhere specific. And in modern forensic investigation, data constructed from phones and vehicles and financial records and biological material and genealogy databases does not point somewhere by accident. The question at the center of this case has never been whether the truth exists somewhere in the record. The truth always exists in the record. The question is who that record is pointing toward. And law enforcement believes it is running out of space between where they are and the answer. When that answer comes, this channel will bring it to you. Not as a rumor pulled from a comment section. Not as a theory dressed up as a scoop. Not as a headline designed for clicks at the expense of accuracy. As a verified fact with the evidence to back it up. That is what we do here, and that is why you keep coming back. If this case matters to you, if Nancy Guthrie's story matters to you, then do one thing right now. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Because the next development in this investigation is coming, and when it lands, it is going to be significant. You do not want to be the person who missed it. Nancy Guthrie is still missing, but she is not forgotten. The people working to bring her home have not stopped, and neither have we.